No, I don't think it's live yet.
Megan, you want to tell me go and I'll start?
Good to go.
We're good? We're live?
Yes.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is our TIDC for today, June 27th, 2025. We do have a quorum at this time. I would like to say that we are on a super tight schedule. And there's been a lot of work that's been done by all of the different committees and staff. And so I do want to say thank you for that. So at this time, let's call attendance.
The Honorable Missy Maderi,
I'm here.
Mr. Jim Becky,
Here.
the Honorable Jimmy Blacklock, Mr. Alex Lennon,
Here.
Mr. Jay Cohen, the Honorable Valerie Povey, the Honorable Brandon Creighton, the Honorable Richard Evans,
Here.
the Honorable Emily Miskell. Here. The Honorable Joe Moody,
Present.
the Honorable David Scheck, the Honorable John Smithy,
Here.
the Honorable James Woolley. Judge, we have quorum.
All right, thank you very much. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes from April 4th, 2025?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes approved, they're done. All right, chair's report. I'm going to keep this brief. As I said, good morning and welcome to our June board meeting. For those of you who have not been members very long, June meeting is typically our most jam-packed because that's when we make most of our grant decisions. We have two groups and staff that review grant applications before we see them. I'd like to thank our Grants Review Committee, which reviews applications first and includes Professor Kathy Burnett, who is Vice President, Associate Dean for Experimental Learning and Director of the Pro Bono Honors Program at South Texas College of Law, Andrea Marsh, Director of the Mithoff Pro Bono Program at the University of Texas School of Law, and Jessica Tyler, Justice Analyst at the Harris County Public Defender's Office. Thank you for spending many hours reviewing the grant applications and providing your feedback. The second group that reviews the grant applications before we see them is the Grants and Reporting Committee, which includes the committee chair Justice Miskell, and Judge J.R. Woolley. Thank you, Justice Miskell and Judge Woolley, for reviewing the grant applications and recommending these grants that we will be reviewing today. Unfortunately, we lost our third Grants and Reporting Committee member, who is Judge Bill Gravel, who I announced last time, has taken another opportunity. As you all know, if we can't make grants, if we don't have money, but thankfully legislative session did appropriate additional funds to address this. The other thing I would like to say is during the grants and reporting section of the meeting, you'll be voting on issuing a new request for applications to help rural communities, programs with one-time and temporary assistance over the next 2 years. Unfortunately, all news from the legislature is not good news. 3 of the 4 TIDC bills that were sent to Governor Abbott were vetoed, including the omnibus bill, SB 2111, which included 12 of our legislative proposals when it got to the governor's desk. The others vetoed bills were SB 1838, the Family Protection Fee Schedule, and HB 4885, which would have allowed managed assigned counsel programs access to confidential juvenile records as part of their attorney appointment process. We are hopeful that the governor is willing to work with TIDC to address his concerns by adding some modified versions to the special session. We will see. We'll try to be working behind the scenes and see where we can go to that. I would like to say that since Judge Gravel is now off of or is taking another opportunity, I have appointed Jay Cohen to the Grants and Reporting, and that will be led obviously still by Judge Miskell, and it will be Justice Miskell and J.R. Woolley and Jay Cohen. And he has agreed to take the position. He's not here. He's not able to be here today. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over for the director's report.
All right. Thank you, Judge Maderi. Wanted to announce a new hire that we have. Claire Whistler joined TIDC earlier this month, last week, as our new communications specialist. She previously served as a senior policy analyst for a city council member in San Antonio. Claire,
Right here.
welcome.
Hi, nice to be here and I'm looking forward to working with you all.
Welcome.
All right, thank you, Claire. Welcome aboard. We have 4 interns this summer, including Carolyn Fay, who's at the University of Texas Law School. She just finished up her summer with us. Meredith Charlton, at South Texas College of Law, Elizabeth Harding, who's at Syracuse Law, and Caitlin Tully, who's at the University of Minnesota Law. Wanted to give y'all a legislative update, where we landed in terms of our budget. Baseline budget, we were appropriated $165.2 million. I should note I'm on page 14 at this point. So $165.2 million on our baseline. That included $41 million for Operation Lone Star representation. So that's about $10.2 million than last biennium. However, there were some additional funds given to TIDC as a budget rider, and we'll be talking about this more a little later on. But the legislature appropriated an additional $10 million in unexpended Operation Lone Star funds for the next biennium, and we'll be able to use that for programs in rural counties created on or before September 1st for programs with one-time expenses or temporary assistance. So we'll talk a bit more about that later in the meeting. There was a rider that requires TIDC to establish a public defender office covering Wharton and Matagorda counties. Terrell and Val Verde counties, there was also a budget rider for us to establish a public defender office covering those counties. An additional $1 million was put into that rider to establish that office. There was a rider dealing with our ability to fund appeals in Operation Lone Star cases by public defender offices. And so the legislature said that we could not fund public defender offices to provide that appellate representation by public defender offices. There was a funding swap, which I mentioned before, that the Office of Capital and Forensic Writs will no longer take their funds from the Fair Defense account. And so they're being funded completely by general revenue at this point. And so that means the money will accumulate in the Fair Defense account between now and the next biennium. And then finally, there was an appropriation, a supplemental appropriations bill of $5.1 million for us to make up for our shortfall from this current biennium. So you'll see on page 15, I've got a table here that kind of lays out how the legislature decided on our exceptional items. They appropriated $10 million in general revenue to address our shortfall problem. They did not appropriate us any funds to fund the pipeline program for paid internships, fellowships, and loan repayments. However, we'll talk later about how we think some of that could still be funded with that additional $10 million they gave us. We also did not get any funds appropriated for the Family Protection Representation Ask, nor any FTEs. And exceptional item 4 was for new and expanded public defense offices. We requested $35 million and received $8.7 million. So you'll see out of that was an additional 18.7. If you look on page 16, that's really your summary of like everything that came in the door in terms of our appropriations. So overall, we're up $25 million over last biennium. So, I mean, one thing, as I mentioned, some of that is going to be temporary funding. And so, but nonetheless, for this biennium, for the next 2 years, we will have a good amount of additional funds to help out the counties. So that's good news. As Judge Mederi had mentioned, unfortunately, a number of our bills were vetoed. On page 17, you'll see a list of all those. If you look at your electronic copy of the board book, there are links to each of the veto statements there if you would like to read them. And so, yes, I've had conversations with Senator Zaffarini's office, and it's my understanding that she's going to try to reach out to the governor's office to see if any of these items can be added to the call for a special session, which has been called. And that's going to happen in July. Recent and upcoming events, we recently had the Public Defense Leaders Training. And thanks to Kenitra Brown, Ashley De La Garza, Kristen, we did the training, we did tabling to do outreach to the bar at that last week. And then we're gonna have the Indigent Defense Workshop on October 23rd and 24th at the Texas Association of Counties. And that's where we meet with various stakeholders to tell them about all this good stuff and expose them to best practices. Finally, regarding Operation Lone Star, arrests are down significantly, and we're going to be talking later about the grant application from the Lone Star Defender's Office, where we'll talk about how that is going to, the staffing is going to change because of that downturn in cases. As I mentioned, we're going to have at least $10 million left over to grant forward for non-OLS types of operations. And then lastly, I did want to update you on regarding the last issue on Operation Lone Star. I wanted to update y'all on is our attempts to resolve the funds due back to TIDC from the Lubbock Private Defender's Office grant. We were hoping to have that resolved by today, but there's still work to do with them and Lubbock County. So I discussed this with Jim Bethke, who used to be the executive director of Lubbock Private Defender's Office many years ago. He knows a lot of the stakeholders up there. So he and I are going to plan a trip up to Lubbock to try to get this worked out before the August board meeting. That is all I have. Yes, Jim.
I just wanted to, and I know we have a really short time, but I really want to compliment you and your team on that public defense leader training, the indigent defense training that went the next day. I think we're only in about our 5th or 6th year, and the numbers have probably quadrupled or whatever, 5 times the number. Very well received, compliments the folks out at the table. So I just wanted to say I and a number of my team were able to attend, and it was excellent training. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? I would like to welcome the chief who has joined us after we called our roll. So thank you very, very much for joining us, Chief. We appreciate you. Dr. Gamble.
Good morning. I first want to report about our data website. We're carrying it on. As you remember, in November, we collected for the first time there the Indigent Defense Expenditure Report. That's where the auditors are reporting their cases and their expenses. I'm on page 19. And as well as the attorney practice time, where attorneys are reporting their percentage of time they've practiced in indigent defense for the year. We've continued to work on reports related to those. Many of our staff will be using this data today in their reports. We've created over 25 reports. So we've been pretty busy trying to get efficient tools for staff and counties to analyze the data that they've submitted. Now we're turning the page and not the literal page, the website page, and we are focusing on an indigent defense plans. That's where counties are going to report their policies related to indigent defense and procedures in their county. We are updating the family protection representation, I will say FPR. FPR has started their reporting previously, and so now we're working on recertifying their plans within our new data website. And then with the criminal and juvenile courts, we are migrating them to the new data website. Our team's working closely still with the Texas A&M Public Policy Research Institute. Their developers are creating this tool for us to help update the criminal and juvenile plan reporting, making it easier on the counties, as well as allowing us to kind of look at some trends statewide that we've not been able to do previously. Completion for that is targeted for August 2025. So hopefully when I see you again, we're excited that it's finished, and our staff will then start training counties and have lots of lead time to get counties the information they need to enter data for that. I'm gonna turn the page literally now. Page 20, we continue to analyze our own data and are just continuing to kind of understand the attorney shortage in the state. I'm just gonna highlight a few things. One of the things that we did is we put all of the attorneys in the same bucket and analyzed them from 2018 to 2023 and tried to see how many of them are new, when are they leaving and coming. And that's that illustration, that graph on the bottom of page 20. That was 7,448 unique attorneys we looked at over this time frame. And overall, you can see year over year, we're losing more. More attorneys are leaving indigent defense than are entering it. Additionally, on page 21, we looked at how long they're staying. We call this number of stints. So we wanted to understand when they come in, how long are they staying around and continuing this work. And so the majority of folks have taken one stint of indigent work over that time frame, meaning they tend to take cases and stay around for a while. The minority of them are taking 2 stints, so they'll come in, they'll leave, they'll come back. And then the tiny minority of them are brave enough to come back 3 times, only 11. But the good news is then we look to see how long are they staying. So they're coming in and they're taking indigent defense cases for 1 stint, but how long? Good news is that over 50% of them are staying for 5 years or longer. That's good news for us. But we want to continue to analyze this data. I'll be working to go back to the beginning of time for TIDC to look at this data, 2014, to try to get a better understanding of what is our trend for how long we're keeping attorneys in this work. Additionally, we would like to create a survey that could go out at the same time as the attorney practice time report, this next reporting period in November, that could ask some questions looking at, why attorneys got into the work, what's keeping them in the work, and what would influence them leaving the work, to try to understand some factors there. So that concludes that portion.
Do you have any comments, questions? Thank you very much, Dr. Cameron. Family protection representation?
Thank you, Judge. I'm actually going to hand it back over to Dr. Gamble. She's going to give a little bit of data info on attorneys that handle FPR work.
So very briefly, we looked at the first set of data that we've collected on these attorneys. That was in 2023. We haven't yet closed 2024. So we just look to see how many are taking it. As a reminder, in 2023, there were over 150,000 attorneys licensed in the state of Texas. 1,088 of them chose to take indigent defense work with family protection representation. And so of those providing, very few of them are doing it full time. So we have a very small number of attorneys that are really kind of focusing and making this the major of their time. 76 of them spend 100% of their time. And then another 365 of them did up to 50% of the time. Then we also looked at, and I'm on page 24 now. We looked at these attorneys by bar year, by license state with the state bar data. And we just looked to see how many of them are getting licensed in the past 10 years. The first kind of graph of people is criminal and juvenile, and then the second is FPR, or family protection representation attorneys. The overwhelming majority of indigent defense attorneys were licensed over 10 years. 81% took criminal and juvenile cases, and 86% of those taking family protection representation. We're just not filling maybe the bench as fast as we would like to, particularly for family protection representation for attorneys. Questions? I'll turn it over to Crystal.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to move through this pretty quick since we do have a lot to cover in the meeting. And for those of you that I assume most people in this room know what we talk about when we say family protection, but just in case anyone needs a quick refresher, when we say family protection representation, we're talking about court-appointed legal representation for kids and parents who are involved in child protective services cases. And so when we say FPR, that's what we're talking about. We are still going through the indigent defense expenditure reports from last fiscal year. It's taking a little longer because we did do the data website redesign, but it looks like we're on track to county spending about the same that they did from the previous year, around $61 million. We'll have the final total for everybody by the next meeting. So moving on to Title IV-E, we'll get to it in a minute, but this is sorry, Judge, but it is a last minute motion and I'll explain why. Hopefully it's not too difficult to get through though. But we have been working with the Department of Family and Protective Services to increase our Title IV-E reimbursements. Quick overview of what that is. This is federal money that counties and organizations who provide representation to children and parents can obtain a percentage of that money spent back. It's been around for about 5 years. We're greatly underutilizing these funds. So we're working with the department to increase those funds. We have an MOU with the department that was signed early this year. They've been working with us. They've been good to work with. We've been meeting pretty regularly. I actually did a training for staff of the department earlier this month. And I got feedback this week that it was well received and really helpful to that staff. I think part of the issue has been a lot of the staff that does the 4E contracts, they've never really done casework. So all of this is very foreign to them. So we're trying to work on better communication, making sure everybody's on the same page. And the next steps we're going to do will be kind of targeted marketing to certain counties to make sure that they kind of like rolling out, this 4E with the intention that at some point, everyone who can get a reimbursement should be getting the reimbursement. But we don't want to totally overload department staff and crush them. We want to make sure that we're doing this well. We do have, I think this is a positive development. The ledge was pretty hard on FPR this session. We're going to try again next session, but we did not get funds and our bill got vetoed. But the Children's Commission has some grant money that could possibly be used to fund a 4E project. I just talked with them yesterday, so that's why this is a last minute addition on a motion. But the idea would be to fund a staff person and create a robust 4E project, which would allow us to keep the other staff person, Natalie Corvington, who we have not filled her position yet, keep that position in the role that she was doing when we fill that, and then add someone new to do 4E and really, really focus on that. We have learned that that will not hit our FTE cap because it's grant funded, so that shouldn't be an issue there. And so the motion I have would just be, our request would be to allow us to apply for the grant. It is due July 23rd, and I am sorry that this was last minute, but I really did just learn about this yesterday. And the Children's Commission seems committed to working with us and making sure that we start getting these funds reimbursed, and using the funds to improve the system is also part of the goal. So that's what we have on 4E.
Okay, so this is due in July, so it can't be pushed off. And so when Crystal found out, she talked to Scott. Scott and I chatted about it with Mr. Vethke as well. And so I guess, Jim, you're making that motion. Is there a second on that?
Second.
All right, Mr. Button, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, passes.
Thank you, everybody. And hopefully we will get that and we can start working on that. And then we've just been doing some committee meetings and presentations that we have listed on page 25 that I will see if live go.
When will we hear back on the grant? Do you have a sense of that?
So I think they meet again in August. Their big commission has to vote on grants.
Right.
And I think that's probably when we will,
Okay.
August, early September, probably. I'll check.
So may have an answer in August as to whether or not we got that grant.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
If you run into any roadblocks with the Children's Commission, please let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, and now for the big act, the big show, we're grants and reporting. It's always our longest. I'll turn it over at this time to Justice Miskell.
All right, I wanted to let everyone know that the Grants and Reporting Committee met last week, June 20th, to review all the grant requests. We have a bunch of motions that we're gonna lay out. I would also note that committee motions don't need a second, so just Robert's Rules of Order tip. I am going to let Edwin lay out the grants items.
Great, thank you, Justice Miskell. Just to start, a few pages of budget updates beginning on page 27 of your materials. And page 27, in fact, does have some good news for us on the budget front. In addition to our legislative improvements in additional funds, our revenue that's collected into the Fair Defense account from court cost collections and several other sources has been improving this year and is coming in substantially above projections. So if you look at on page 27 at the top, the YOY year over year change for collections year to date, so for the period of September to June, we're 2.1 million ahead of over last year. And so we were basically projecting it to be flat. So when we carry this forward to make projections for how we'll end the fiscal year, we believe we'll be at least 2.5 million above where we were last year, which helps to kind of mitigate the shortfall that we've been operating in this current biennium. Pages 28 and 29 are just a regular budget update on some active grants from previous budget years. Most of the activity is related to ARPA funds that TIDC was provided, and we've been spending those down through some grants that you all approved a couple of years ago now. And all this will be wrapped up before the end of this fiscal year. So our accounting life is about to be simplified, but we do have some active grants from previous years, and they are being spent down. Page 30 shows just a quick update of budget to actuals for the FY25 year. We are still well below. A lot of our spending for this fiscal year has not gone out yet. In particular, we've not yet issued the formula grants for FY 2025. We have, as you'll see, budgeted 17 million for the formula grant program this year, and we have an item coming up here to boost that in light of some of our positive budget news. But so that's page 30, just budget to actuals year to date. Page 31, so we're asking the board, of course, to approve a number of grants. And page 31 is just a discussion purposes budget showing next biennium and our projections and our revenue that the legislature has provided, just to show and be clear that we have sufficient revenue to support all of the recommendations that are being presented to you all today in terms of our ability to afford this. And so if you just look at the bottom of page 31, we have FY26 and FY27 projections. This budget is constructed basically on the hypothetical, but hopefully the actual, that the recommended grants on the table today would be approved. So even if everything is approved, you'll see at the very bottom, we still have just under 2.7 million that would be still unallocated for 2026, and then lesser amount for 2027. But and that's just, again, a sort of discussion purposes projection budget to demonstrate that we certainly have sufficient resources for everything that's being recommended to you all today. So we'll jump into the particular items where we have some committee motions next. Page 32, we are bringing forward a recommendation to increase the formula grant budget. As I just mentioned, it's currently 17 million for 2025. We had been funding the formula grant program at around 20 or 20.5 million in recent years. However, when we came into this biennium and we discovered that there was a very significant shortfall in Fair Defense Act revenue, Fair Defense account revenues collected below what the legislature had appropriated to us. So the cash wasn't there to support the appropriation is the bind we were in. So to respond to that, we cut both improvement grants and formula grants. We cut the formula grant program to 17.5 million last year, and it's at 17 million this year. In light of the much improved budget situation, both on the improved revenue that I just mentioned a few minutes ago, as well as the supplemental appropriation of 5.1 million that the legislature provided to address our current budget shortfall, we're recommending that the staff had recommended that the formula grant program budget be increased back up to 20.5 million. And we did have a committee motion.
All right, so the TIDC Grants and Reporting Committee moves to recommend increasing the fiscal year 2025 formula grant award budget from 17 million to 20.5 million. We don't need a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. Page 33 in your materials is regarding the special request for applications that Scott mentioned earlier. So we had some significant funds appropriated to us in the current biennium for our Operation Lone Star Defense Program that were not going to be used. These were leftover funds. Of course, we're not to the very end of the biennium, but we're projecting that we'll have at least 10 million from this current appropriation for OLS defense that won't be used. So the legislature in this rider that you see toward the top of page 33 as budget rider has given TIDC the authority to use up to $10 million carried forward from the current biennial appropriation for OLS defense to the new biennium, but specifically to be used for a somewhat narrow purpose, and that's for programs in rural counties created on or before September 1st, 2025 for one-time expenses or temporary assistance. So a targeted carry forward of some unspent funds from the current biennium. In order for us to get this out to our programs that may be eligible, we are proposing to just do a supplemental request for applications. This is kind of a different animal from what we fund with our standard request for applications. And so we have a committee motion at the bottom of page 33 to do so.
All right, so the committee moves to recommend authorizing staff to issue a special supplemental request for applications for one-time expenses or temporary assistance for rural defender programs as outlined in the legislative budget rider. Any discussion?
I did want to just note that this paragraph here that starts with some examples of programs, those are some of the ideas that staff came up with that we thought would fit within the parameters of the rider. And so it's within here that, you know, our interpretation of the rider is, you know, even though we did not get specific funds and that exceptional item for paid internships and paid fellowships, those would be, you know, a temporary thing that we could, you know, communicate to the counties that, hey, this is not money that's going to continue, but for this specific purpose, for a, you know, a distinct time period for a paid internship or paid fellowship, we think that that fits within the rider. And so, I mean, one thing staff has been talking about is trying to get the rural counties to tell us up front very early, like if they have plans to have paid internships and paid fellowships. From our perspective, that is a priority, that we need to get more lawyers into the work. And so if we can get them to tell us kind of upfront that they have plans for this, then we would have a good sense, right, of like how much additional funds we have otherwise to be spent from these funds. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that underlined here, you'll see that we believe that family protection representation pilot projects in rural counties to demonstrate the value of these investments could be used with these funds as once again, pilot project, temporary funding. And so, you know, those are some things I wanted to highlight for you to make sure that y'all were on board with that.
Other discussion? All in favor?
As you know, I'd love to see prioritization of the family protection issue, and I'm glad y'all are thinking about using this money that way.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you all. Next item, if take a look at pages 34 and 35, we have our slates of continuing grants. These are all grants that were previously approved by the board for either sustainability projects or what we call our step down grants. And page 34 includes the slate of continuing grants moving into 2026 with no budget changes, and we have a committee motion there.
All right, so the committee moves to approve the award of the continuing FY 2026 improvement grants with, yes, with no budget changes according to page 34. Any discussion?
I abstain regarding Harris County.
I'm going to abstain as far as Nueces County.
And I need to abstain for Bear County.
Any other things anyone wants to note? Okay,
Oh, and Cameron County, I'm out on that one for Fifth Region too.
all right. Otherwise, so abstaining is necessary on your per county basis. Do you otherwise vote to approve the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. On page 35, we have the continuing grants where there were some budget changes. As you can imagine, it's very routine for counties to come to us and with changes that include very typically cost of living adjustments on compensation, et cetera. The board had adopted some guidance for staff and we have some policy that we use to apply to make sure that the proposed budget changes are within the policy guidance provided. And then page 35, we have a motion for some of the approved continuing grants with some budget changes.
Okay, so the committee moves to award continuing FY 2026 improvement grants. These are the ones with budget changes according to the schedule on page 35. Any discussion and any abstentions anyone needs to know?
I need to abstain on the Medina County.
Medina.
Thank you, Judge Evans.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you all. Now, if you could take a look at page 36 in your materials, this is just the list of all the new grant proposals for 2026. And if you look at the column on the right and there, you'll see that some of the proposals that came in, we have a recommendation to fund. Some of them are blank because we believe that they're very good projects, but they're just not quite ready. And we routinely will work with grantees with a promising application that needs some additional work and bring them back with you in August. And so for most of these that are not getting a recommendation for funding today, that's exactly what the staff is going to be doing. And we anticipate bringing many of those back to you in August. There was one here at the bottom from the Capital Area Private Defender Service, a wrongful conviction review project that was not recommended for funding, not a good fit for our program. And otherwise, we will go ahead and jump into this. Just summary sheet, we're not going to vote on the slate, but I'll just quickly work through the ones where we have recommendations to move forward. So beginning on page 37, I'll note that we have two pages here for Brazos County. Brazos County, I broke down their expansion proposal for their public defender office at my request into a section that was specific for mental health defender program and other expansion program for their PD, just because of the way that we are funded and we have a particular budget rider and pot of money for mental health. So that's why we have this broken into two components. The first one on page 37 is for an expansion of the Brazos County Public Defender Program to include additional capacity to handle juvenile and appellate cases. We helped the county set up this program back in 2023 with our grant program. It's been very successful and we believe it's going to be, and they've demonstrated that they have the case demands that would be where this additional capacity would be very welcome. Got very positive recommendations from our external reviewers as well as the Grants Reporting Committee, and we have a motion at the bottom of page 36.
All right, so the committee moves to recommend the award of FY 2026 improvement grant of the amount reflected to Brazos County for the Juvenile Appellate Division expansion. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Page 38 is the other part of the Brazos County proposed expansion. This would be for a couple of staff that would be focused on clients with mental health challenges. As I mentioned, the legislature for several budget cycles now has earmarked $5 million per biennium specifically for indigent defense programs serving defendants with mental health challenges. So Brazos County is asking for a couple of additional positions in that vein. Again, very positive support on this one and good consensus for moving it forward. And we have a motion on the bottom of page 38.
All right, so the committee moves to recommend this award of an FY 2026 improvement grant to Brazos County for the Public Defender's Office Mental Health Division. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Page 39 is a request from Culberson County. Culberson County is the host county for the existing Far West Texas Regional Public Defender Office. This is a 5-county PD that handles the counties immediately to the east of El Paso in the Big Bend region. And program was set up back in 2017 with help of TIDC grants. They currently receive sustainability funding for covering those 5 counties. The program's had a very positive impact in that region. They are proposing to expand their services to cover 2 additional counties. That would be just moving them further to the east along the Rio Grande, and that's Valverde and Terrell counties. This one is somewhat unusual. We have 2 grants. I think Scott mentioned them. where the legislature added a budget rider that basically directs TIDC to move forward on this project. We didn't necessarily need that nudge because we were ready to recommend this last go round, but didn't have the resources. So we're pleased to bring it forward at this time. And so we do have a committee motion to support the expansion of this program on the bottom, page 39.
And just because this was new to me as I'm new on TIDC, can you explain why, for example, the previous two grants we voted on step down 80, 60, 40, 20,
Yeah.
and this one stays at 2/3, 1/3? Can you just briefly
Sure.
explain?
Sure. So there are basically two main kinds of improvement grants that we offer. The standard one would be an 80, 60, 40, 20 step down grant. What that means is 80% funding in the first year, 60% in the second year, 40, 20, and then transitioning to county funding. The idea of the model is to give counties an incentive to make a big change, but eventually to take, and so we give them front-loaded support and incentive to implement improvements, and then they take on the project after those 4 years wind down. The other type of grant, and the Culberson County, Far West Texas is one of these, is a sustainability grant program that is eligible for ongoing funding for rural counties that have regional programs, regional public defender programs. And the board has adopted a policy of supporting these types of programs if funds are available for 2/3 on an ongoing basis. Because a lot of these smaller rural counties don't have the sufficient resources to meet their needs and often have very significant attorney shortages when relying on the private part. So the percentages that you see now for a new expansion of the sustainability project, they're eligible for 80% in the first year, as you see on the top of page 39, and then they transition to the standard 2/3. There are some rare exceptions on that, but that's the standard policy and why the reimbursement rate varies.
All right, so the committee moves to recommend award of an FY 2026 improvement grant for the amount stated to Culberson County to expand the Far West Texas Regional Public Defender's Office to include Val Verde and Terrell counties. Any other discussion?
I have a question. What is the cutoff, Edwin, in regards to population on that? Is that,
So the standard default cutoff is 100,000, counties of 100,000 or less. In certain projects where the programs have come forward and their counties are slightly above that threshold, the counties have requested a variance when they're positioned to serve as a hub county and bring in, say, in the case of Concho Valley, 7 or 11 small rural counties below that. But the standard is 100K, and the commission has entertained some variances on that on a case-by-case basis.
so we thought this was a good idea anyway, and then of course the legislature helped us out by doing this.
Yes.
But what year 1, 2, 3, 4, what happens to year 5, 6, 7?
So we just don't, so the
Just
policy.
continuing on
Yeah.
and on and on?
The policy for our sustainability grant program is that we provide ongoing support.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, we don't have a crystal ball. We're at the mercy of the legislature in terms of maintaining our budget. But the policy is for these sustainability grants to provide ongoing support at that level
Mhm.
unless something changes. And the other thing I'll point out is when we recommend a new we're very judicious about recommending new sustainability grants to the board because we know that these obligations are going to stay with us moving forward if things go well. And so we model out the budget needs for, into the future 5 or 6 years and see where we are to make sure that we're not going to put ourselves in a bind. If the legislature were to slash our funding, we'll have to revisit that, but that's the current
Do
policy.
you know how many current sustainability grants we have?
I believe we're probably, I haven't counted them up, but they're all on the
Come out
list.
of-
But I would say, in terms of projects, probably a dozen or so. And then many of those have 7, in one case, 11 counties. Some have 5 counties. So projects probably around a dozen. And then all of those are multiple county projects. So this funding is benefiting dozens of counties in the state.
Thank you.
Did I hear someone whisper an
I think it
answer?
was 14. I counted from the chart.
Thank you,
And when you say they're on the list, are you referring to these
Yeah.
no changes and budget changes ones on 34 and 35 that we
Exactly.
already approved?
Exactly, and if you'll see there, the type of grant, well, yes, the type of grant shows either multi-year, which is our 80, 60, 40, 20 step down, or sustainability.
Gotcha.
So,
Thank you.
If you're curious which other counties benefit. Did we get a vote on?
I moved, we had discussion, any other discussion?
I just wanted to note that we do have representatives from Valverde County. The county attorney, David Martinez, is here. And we have the chief defender from Far West, James McDermott, and his number 2, Paul Chambers. They're all here if any folks have any questions for them.
All right, all in favor, this is the motion on page 39. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Next, turning to page 40, we have a request from Harris County. However, this is for a statewide program that Harris County does somewhat benefit from, and that it's participating in a statewide program. But they have been kind enough to serve as a host and coordinator for the statewide Indigent Defense Mentoring and Training Program, which we call FIDDLE, or Future Indigent Defense Leaders Program. This particular grant is for cohort 6 of this program. It's been very successful. It's a collaboration between Gideon's Promise, the TCDLA, Harris County, and TIDC, and essentially is a very intensive and longitudinal approach to developing indigent defense attorneys. It's been very successful, and this it adds a new cohort for 6.0. We have a committee motion bottom of page 40.
So the committee moves to recommend an FY 2026 improvement grant for the amount shown to Harris County for the Future Indigent Defense Leaders Cohort 6 statewide training and mentoring program.
I abstain.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Page 41 is a grant for Lampasas County to get an indigent defense coordinator. These are the positions we fund for counties to coordinate the intake of requests for counsel, to oversee the determination of eligibility, and ensure that appointments of counsel are handled timely according to statutory requirements. Very great bang for the buck. We have a committee motion to award Lampasas County for an IDC on page 41.
All right, so the committee moves to recommend award of an FY 2026 improvement grant for the amount shown to Lampasas County for the Indigent Defense Coordinator Program. Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I will let everyone know, we discussed all of these in a lot more detail in our committee meeting, and I'm assuming any
Yeah.
board member that's interested is welcome to attend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that as well. I mean, I used to lead grants and reporting as well, and I can't tell you in public, policy and standards as well that Alex does. There's so much work that the staff does behind the scenes on this. The committees meet ahead of time, and there's more questions that go back and forth. So, you know, what we've done is we wrap up a very pretty picture and to be organized and run on time so that we don't have these long discussions, but anybody is open to ask any type of questions at all. But I do want to say, you know, thank you very much, because it is a lot of work. I recognize that. Okay.
Yeah, and so to recap this, the staff does 2 levels of review, then our committee reviews, then we bring it to the larger bodies. So we're not, you know, this summary and at those levels.
Right. It's not the first time we've seen this, right?
Okay, did I move on Lampasas County?
I
Or yes,
believe we
Okay.
have
Yeah.
both. Okay.
then we vote, okay.
All right, the next item is page 42. This is a request from Maverick County for a sustainability grant for a new 3-county public defender office serving Maverick, Zavala, and Dimmitt. I want to note, just in laying this out, that TIDC, through its policy monitoring program, where we send out our team to evaluate compliance with requirements of the Fair Defense Act, we've had an ongoing review and with open concerns in Maverick County. And we believe that one of the benefits of implementing an institutionalized defender program down there is going to greatly help them address some of these longstanding issues. So I note them there, and we may hear more about it. But I think in terms of transforming a county or a region that's had some significant challenges on the indigent defense front, this has huge upside potential. We got a lot of positive support for that because of the approach. They are proposing to contract with Texas Rio Grande Public Defender. It's an established nonprofit public defender that has a track record of operating these programs for counties like Bee, Live Oak, and McMullen, and other Goliad. So they're well positioned and experienced to step in as a contractor to work with the county to implement the program. And so on the basis of that, we have a motion at the bottom on page 42.
Alright, so the committee moves to recommend the award of the FY 2026 improvement grant for the amount shown to Maverick County for a rural regional public defender to serve Maverick, Zavala, and Dimmitt counties. Any discussion?
Really pleased with see how this is going. Couple things. One, I got to meet the county judge from Maverick County 2 weeks ago. I was doing a presentation, court professionals in Houston. She's, really excited to kind of be working with TIDC, so I wanted to go ahead and say that. And one thing is, we're sometimes hands off as far as staff once the grant is given. I do think this is one where I don't want us to be, hovering, but I do think, and I think staff's probably aware of it, but I just wanted to have it on the record that we're gonna have to probably provide a higher level of oversight and helping them, succeed in doing this. So and I think staff's probably aware of it, but I did want to just say that.
One of the things I had asked in the committee meeting was Maverick County was one of the Operation Lone Star counties. And I had asked whether the funds coming in for Operation Lone Star had had any kind of spillover effects on improving the infrastructure. And the answer was not really, because OLS funds were restricted and they were run on a separate track. But one thing they did do is sort of highlight the challenges and opportunities locally. So that sort of feeds into this program. And did I say that correctly?
Yes, I
Okay.
think that's a great point.
Yeah, I think another point to make here in terms of using Texas Rio Grande Public Defender as the provider is because they are already, they have an office in Maverick County. They're doing Operation Lone Star. I think it will be easy for them to add staff there. They're already there. They're kind of already in place. They've set up offices before. So I think this will have the benefit of being able to ramp up that program even quicker.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Right, next item is page 43. This is from Walker County for implementation of the TechShare Indigent Defense software system. This is a program that some of you may not be familiar with who are new to the commission. Years ago, we helped to fund through Bell County, as it turns out, a program that helps counties manage the entire front end appointment process for indigent defense, screening, financial screening, and then appointing the next available attorney who's qualified on the wheel automatically, automating the procedure. So it's a great addition of efficiency to the counties that implement it. It also makes billing and vouchers and the judicial review and approval of vouchers all electronic and very efficient. So that's what TechShare Indigent Defense is. It's been further developed by the nonprofit that is associated with the Urban Counties Association. However, it's a nonprofit software company. So we fund half of the cost of implementation and setup, and that's what this is. So we have a motion on page 43 to help Walker County be more efficient.
All right, so the committee moves to recommend award of an FY 2026 single year improvement grant for the amount shown to Walker County to support implementation of TechShare. Any discussion? I was gonna add, when I became administrative judge in Collin County, we were still doing paper pay sheets and all this kind of stuff. And we in-house built a system from scratch because I don't think we realized there was something. So
Well,
I think also maybe we can advertise that to counties, but I think it sounds like a great idea. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Right, and also this, I'll just highlight along those lines, we do have some budget rider guidance to help counties with cost effectiveness initiatives, and this of course falls into that category as well. Page 44 is a proposal from Wharton County for the Wharton-Matagorda Regional Public Defender Office. This is the other one that the legislature has specifically called out in a budget rider and directed TIDC to make it happen. So we we have that guidance. However, again, we didn't necessarily need that nudge because we wanted to bring this forward. And we just didn't have the resources last time, but we do now. So the program will serve 2 counties. I will note that usually our standard sustainability grant guidelines are for counties of below 100K. 3 or more counties is what we try to do. In this case, they worked very hard to try to build a bigger regional program, but they just didn't have the buy-in from some of the surrounding counties. But we think that with these 2, they definitely can make it work and will still benefit from some economies of scale. So the other thing that I'll note, just because it's a little bit unusual based on our previous discussion about reimbursement rates, this one is slated for 100% funding in this year. That's because the legislative budget writer directed us to fully fund it in year 1 and then pivot, as opposed to the 80% that would be year 1. So we have implemented the legislature's guidance in that budget writer here. Going to be a great project. We have some great local stakeholders who've been working with us on this. And the last thing I'll say is that this grant proposal implements the TIDC planning study that Bill Cox and Kristen Meeks worked up and updated over a couple of years now to help them plan, scale, scope the program. And so they're basically asking us to just implement the program as we recommended it be implemented. Motion on page 40.
Right, so the committee moves to recommend the award of an FY 2026 improvement grant for the amount shown to Wharton County for the Wharton Matagorda Regional Public Defender Office. Discussion? I think you mentioned in the committee meeting, the reason it was harder to assemble a bigger group of counties is just geographically, this is located right next to Fort Bend County, which is next to Harris County, but these are not of size that would compare.
Right.
We've also funded a office in Victoria County that covers 4 counties down there, and have had some conversations with them about the possibility of Wharton and Matagorda joining those other 4 counties to create a larger office. And the feedback we've received is the existing 4 just feel like they want to make sure that their program is like running smooth before they try to do any sort of expansion. So I think it's theoretically possible, that maybe those other, that other office called Crossroads Public Defender might want to join with them. But at this point, it's really structured as a 2-county operation, a dedicated office.
All in favor? Aye.
All right, next item on page 45. So we have 2 more improvement grants for discussion. We're getting through most of these. Next item on page 45 is from the Capital Area Private Defender Service. This is the nonprofit organization that their primary program is to function as the Managed Assigned Counsel program here in Travis County. Also, several years ago, they took under their wing and they now operate the My Padilla project, which is the statewide resource that TIDC funds to provide Padilla advisals for attorneys to ensure that they're complying with that Supreme Court case law in Padilla v. Kentucky. So they have developed this role of operating a statewide resource in their organization that is benefiting counties all over Texas. And this program is in some ways very similar in that they're proposing a statewide resource that would be focused on mitigation in non-capital or non-murder cases that are not death penalty eligible. This is an area where attorneys apparently are not very well prepared and don't always have the knowledge or resources to meet their obligations in providing effective assistance in this space. The proposal is for a 3-year pilot program where they would assist in training and one-on-one consulting, coaching for attorneys involved in these non-death murder cases, and then also to partner with a research partner to document the effectiveness of the program. So folded into this 3-year pilot project is a robust program evaluation component done by professional indigent defense research expert. The external, so this is a little bit different from our standard program. We're usually funding county-specific direct services. This is a statewide resource that's more like the MyPedia statewide resource. I think there's some similarities in the sense that I'll just highlight in the sense that just as in MyPedia, you know, if you don't get that kind of advisal on the immigration-related collateral consequences of a plea, that's potentially ineffective assistance. And similarly, if in a murder case that's non-death, if sufficient mitigation is not done in the case, there's potential that could be ineffective assistance as well. And so this is just trying to give attorneys the resources they need to meet their obligations. We got positive feedback. I have to say that in terms of the grant applications that come into TIDC, this was one of the most robust and well-developed. We have a large number of recommendation letters or support letters that we received from a number of stakeholders, including a number of attorneys that practice in those kinds of cases and you know, endorse the need for this. The other thing that I'll highlight is that when we first heard about the idea, we wanted to make sure that we could document that if this resource were developed and funded, attorneys would use it, that they would avail themselves of this resource. And so what they did was a pretty substantial survey of attorneys across the state to determine whether there was an appetite and a hunger for this kind of a service. And so as part of the application that was submitted, they provided that data that demonstrated that there really is a need and desire for this type of support. So I do know that we have some folks here from the program if there are questions, but we do have support from the external committee and from GNR, so I'll stop there.
All right, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, more discussion.
I did have one question, and I'm in support of it, but are like major urban jurisdictions able to participate in this?
Yes, it's statewide.
Okay.
It's not, unlike some of our programs.
MyPedia, it's again, it's kind of more targeted towards the rural. So I want to just make sure that like a jurisdiction like Bear County, just south of Travis, is able to participate.
I think this is the way that the services would be available is to any attorney with the right type of case where they could, as opposed to limiting it by urban.
Very good.
I think the evaluation component does contemplate looking specifically at the upside for rural counties. Let me just stop and see if, am I on the right
Yeah,
track
so
there?
so the way that the research component is gonna work is we're gonna select a couple of urban counties, a couple of suburban counties, and a couple of rural counties to
Okay.
do the evaluation.
So we would,
The training part is, you know, we're gonna do them on Zoom, so.
Very good.
so so it's really a statewide program, but they would be looking at the impact kind of through those different lenses.
Very good.
Other questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Page 45, turning to page 46, and this is one that was not prepared in time to be looked at by the Grants and Reporting Committee, so we don't have a committee motion on this one, but we did get it to the point where it's ready to be brought to you on. This is on page 46, and this is the continuation of the funding for the Operation Lone Star Indigent Defense Program that CIDC has been funding since the commencement of OLS. So so since 2022, we've been receiving this legislative funding specifically for Operation Lone Star Indigent Defense to make sure that defendants involved in this operation have access to constitutionally required counsel, and also, and importantly, to shield the counties in that region, that border region, from the huge spikes in indigent defense costs that result from these many cases that they didn't used to have to deal with. And so we've been fully funding the indigent defense costs for those counties for these OLS cases, and this would continue that program. The Lone Star Defender Office is the TIDC grantee that basically operates as the indigent defense hub to provide all these services. They operate as a managed assigned counsel where they're making appointments of counsel, ensuring that timelines and statutory requirements are met. They are also, in order to provide the services, they are contracting with public defender organizations. They are overseeing a panel of private attorneys, and they are providing some direct representation themselves. to cover those cases. Recently, with the Supreme Court emergency order expired, we had to kind of retool how the program would operate moving forward. And so all the counties had the choice of just handling these cases themselves moving forward, or continuing to use the LSDO services. And the counties, I think almost across the board, opted to continue to use LSDO to handle any additional incoming OLS cases, and they've amended their indigent defense plans in order to do that. So we've got the county buy-in, and they want to continue to work with this program. But beyond that, there are thousands of cases that are from previous arrests that are still in the pipeline that need to be adjudicated. They're working their way through the system. So most of this funding is not contemplated for the new cases. The new arrests are down substantially, and we've kind of right-sized the program based on that new reality. But we have to make sure that there's funding to carry those thousands of cases from previous arrests when things were much more active through the process to conclusion. And, you know, I also note that there are a lot more felonies. It used to be that these were misdemeanor trespass cases, but the vast majority of the cases in the latter part of OLS have been felony smuggling cases that take a longer time to handle, often require in-person appearance, et cetera. So this program will continue to make sure that the resources are there. However, it's been cut very dramatically because the situation on the ground has changed very dramatically. So we're reducing the required representation capacity from 550 cases a month to only 100 cases per month. One of the public defender contracts is being eliminated. The other one is being significantly reduced and only for 1 year. And the LSDO staff itself is being reduced by 2/3 over this grant period as well. So we're adapting to the new reality. I think that we've gone back and forth with the grantee to make sure that the program is making the necessary changes given the new realities on the ground. And I think with that, I'll pause to see if there are questions.
The only other thing I would add is just wanted to reiterate that the legislature has once again given us $41 million for the biennium to cover this representation. So, you know, based on the budget that we have here, we think we have like more than enough money to cover this request. And it's, as Edwin had said, it's significantly reduced. The staffing levels and expenses are significantly reduced compared to the past biennium.
One other point that I need to make here that I forgot to mention, when we give a grant like this, we do not give the full amount to the grantee and tell them to go forth and spend. What we do is we monitor the actual expenses as they go. And so just like in the current biennium where we had a grant in place for OLS, things changed a lot in terms of new arrests going down substantially. And so the actual spending was way below budget, and the actual money that was going out the door from TIDC was way down. So you know, the actual spending will track the actual needs and as we move forward. But this is the budget that we believe is necessary to keep the program operating in place, make sure we're covered for those many cases in the pipeline.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right, that concludes all of our kind of improvement grant category recommendations that we have ready for you now. The next several pages in your meeting materials from pages 51 through 55 are summaries of projects that we think are very likely to be back with you in August with a recommendation, but we need to do some more work with the counties to just refine those proposals. So Atascosa mental health public defender staff that would be working with a new mental health court down there. Hayes County wants to expand the mental health division of their public defender. Medina County, same thing, mental health staff to support specialized representation for clients with mental illness. And then Polk County would like to implement a public defender program. We think all of these are very promising, just need some more work to help the counties map out the details. And so we anticipate bringing these back to you in August. And then on page 55, this was the one that we have a recommendation not to fund. This is also from the Capillary Private Defender Service. to continue a current wrongful conviction review project. This just wasn't a good fit for the TIDC program, and so we're not recommending that one move forward. Without any questions on those, we'll talk about most of them again in August. I'll direct your attention to page 56 for the last recommended award. This is a different kind of grant. TIDC has what we call the Extraordinary Disbursement Grant Program to help counties who experience a spike in indigent defense costs that causes a financial hardship in the county. Most of the time, these kinds of requests have to do with, say, very expensive costs in capital litigation. In this case, it's not a capital case, but a very serious case where a small county got waylaid with a very big indigent defense bill that they had to pay. And it was, particularly in the context of their budget, did cause a very serious hardship. So this is just what this program is intended for, is to provide some relief to the county with this type of challenge. The request is for $39,651. This is for a case that now we do have the regional public defender that operates in this region. However, they could not handle this case because of a conflict of interest rules, and so it had to be appointed private counsel. The voucher came in well after the case was disposed, and as you can read in the county judge's letter, if you'd like, on page 60, it's created some. So we have a committee motion on the bottom of page 56 to help out Brewster County in connection with this unexpected expense.
And we indicated that there was a conflict, right? And that's why they couldn't.
That's right.
Okay, great.
I
That's
think the public defender was representing the co-defendant.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
that's correct.
Okay. We discussed this one at length in committee, and one of the problems is once the district judge approves the attorney's pay sheet, the county can do nothing about it. They have to pay the amount that the district judge signs. And so that's what this is. It was, I think the amount for this one case was more than, so either approximately half of their entire indigent defense budget for the year.
Wow.
So, yeah, in addition to their
What was the offense?
was it a murder case?
Was it?
Murder case, and so the county already kind of struggles to fund its portion of the regional program. And then, of course, on top of that, they have the CPS cases where they don't get any state funding, and it's like, well, for a while. And then also they have to handle conflict cases. So we do have that committee motion. I also want to thank Justice Miskell for making a really good suggestion about potentially changing some of our indigent defense plan templates so that we can just try to ensure that people submit vouchers timely. Because part of the challenge here had to do with the timing of submitting the voucher. That wasn't the only problem.
I mean, yeah, there definitely are some process related oversight things that can be done to help, but at the bottom line is none of that would have helped here because the district judge approved this amount and the county can't afford to pay it.
Right.
So the committee moves to recommend this award of an FY25 extraordinary disbursement grant for the amount shown to Brewster County for that unanticipated higher indigent defense expense. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Brewster County is going.
Thank you all. That concludes our grant award section. We do have one other part of the grants team report, which I'm going to hand it over to Deborah Stewart, our fiscal monitor, to just give a quick update again on page 62.
Thank you, Reverend. Good morning, everyone. The fiscal monitoring report can be found on pages 62 to 68 in the meeting notebook. Here's an outline of the activities for the year, but just to summarize, since the April meeting, the fiscal team now we worked on our IWR desk reviews and the open ongoing monitoring. Just had open. We did not begin any new on-site reviews, but we did have a new type of review that we started this quarter. This new review is called a quarterly grant review. The goal of this process is to review and validate the expenses in at least one category of each grant submitted to the provided by the county, and we just want to look at it each one category each of each grant each year. So we get through that. I'm sorry. A summary of these reviews can be found on page 67. And then lastly, I wanted to report that we had 13 counties that submitted their comprehensive annual financial report and single audit. I did go through and review these. 2 counties, Bear and Travis County, had their TIDC grants selected for the major program that was reviewed. And the outside auditors, neither one of them reported any findings on those grants. So that's good news. But anyway, that completes my report. And I think I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Fox from the improvement team.
That's good news, Deb. Yeah, I was kind of curious because I was getting calls that I normally don't get from the auditor's office earlier this year. And I was kind of wondering what was going on. So, okay, good.
So that report concludes our grants and reporting section. So back to Judge Maderi to move us forward.
All right, thank you very much. And once again, I really want to help or thank staff for everything that you all do and the grants and reporting committee. It's definitely heavy lifting and we appreciate it. So let's move on to Kristen and Bill. All right.
Good morning. The improvement team report starts on page 70 of the meeting book. Given how much else we've had this morning, I just want to highlight a few things. The first is to compliment Linda Gonzalez on our team, who is our Operation Lone Star lead. As Edwin pointed out when he was talking about the pivot for Lone Star defenders with the expiration of the Supreme Court's order, Linda has done a Herculean task meeting with counties to get indigent defense plans in place, authorizing LSDO to appoint counsel for cases going forward, since there was no longer the authorization for the TIDC plans. Those have been put in place, been approved, and are now on the TIDC website with indigent defense plans. She's even made a number of trips to counties to make the personal contacts and be sure we got those into place. The other item is thank you for approving our next group for future indigent defense leaders. We get great feedback from both the participants and their offices on an ongoing basis as to the difference it makes in being able to keep attorneys in the work and even to recruit attorneys. One of the things we hear on an ongoing basis is new lawyers want to hear what kind of training they're going to receive. And hearing they have the opportunity to have an intensive 2-week program and ongoing follow-ups over the next 2 years makes a big difference for those offices in what they're able to present and then secure new applicants to their offices. Krista and I have been working closely with Dr. Gamble and the policy team, supporting the website redevelopment and working on the templates. One of the items we've done is incorporating Justice Miskel's suggestions for attorney fee payment for the questions counties will answer as they work through, including, do you have a deadline for payment? If so, what is that deadline? And do you accept interim billings? We're hoping that with the new format, it will help counties to better tailor their indigent defense plans and to provide more clarity. And then will lead to a lot more information going back to counties that they've been asking TIDC for literally almost since the beginning. How does our plan compare to what's happening in neighboring counties, similarly sized counties, and trends across the state? And then the last item is I want to highlight Kristen's work on recruitment. We are now reaching outside of Texas boundaries and have attended programs at Oklahoma law schools to start bringing in more attorneys and again, trying to fill our need to staff our offices and represent the defendants who are appointed to them. And that's the improvement team report.
Thanks, Bill. All right, Mr. Bunnan.
All right. The first item is about our analysis of reviewing the distribution of appointments. Joel, you gonna explain that? Or is Wesley gonna, are you gonna do that? Okay. More like your thing.
Like the Grants and Reporting Committee, the Policies and Standards Committee met virtually back on June 2nd. As a reminder, that committee is newly constituted by Judge Maderi, is Mr. Bunnan, Mr. Betty, Judge Evans, and Commissioner Covey, and Judge Maderi was able to attend that as well. So we had a full Zoom house with 5 members present. At that meeting, we heard a presentation on the distribution of appointments in Harris County and among the felony appointments made by the district courts. in Harris County, the appointments are made all by the individual courts. There's not any centralization of the appointments, and the outside group, January Advisors, did a full analysis and a webinar prior to this committee meeting that made a connection between payments to rather campaign contributions and those appointments. We don't really look at that, but it did lead to a greater discussion around the analysis of distribution of appointment, which is by statute required to be made in a fair, neutral, and non-discriminatory manner. And so we looked at our existing policy, which is the IDC, when we do policy monitoring, analyze the distribution of appointments based at the case level. So we look at all felony appointments within a county, all misdemeanor appointments and all juvenile appointments. And the conversation was that sometimes can hide what's happening in individual court levels. We look at that based on whether the top 10% of attorneys get more than 3 times their expected share of the appointment. So if they get more than that 3 times their expected share of appointments, we make a finding, which is a presumption, a rebuttable presumption. The county can always demonstrate that they still have a fair process in spite of that initial finding. So on page 75, we had a number of options that were discussed. I'm not going to go through these because there isn't a formal recommendation at this time. But we did get direction from the committee to continue to research this issue and come forward with a recommendation. I think we'll have a further discussion at the committee level as to whether we should change our process for distribution analysis. And in the meantime, the committee also directed staff to make additional observations in our policy monitoring reports if we do in the course of those reports find potential issues in the individual court level assignments of attorneys. And that includes Harris County, because unrelated, we just happen to have an open monitoring review in Harris County right now. Distribution of appointments is not on the table in this review, but we were directed to include a reference to this. An additional observation, we've used these in other contexts. They don't require a response from the county, and it's not a formal finding, but it does still make note of the issue.
I was gonna say, most counties would not be affected by changing this analysis, but like Harris County, where we've got 29 felony judges, all you need is a few outliers that only appoint like several lawyers over and over, and it would be washed out by the total body of folks. So that's why we suggested this, but they're gonna look at it.
Exactly. Well, turning to page 76, this is the next agenda item, but they're closely related to our contract defender program rules. The examination of that appointment distribution analysis also included a look at caseloads of the attorneys, starting with Harris County, because that was the subject of the presentation the committee heard. And that does lead to a proposal to amend the contract rules. So by way of background, we have the IDC adopted contract defender rules, which apply this is the statutory definition, where private attorneys are engaged to provide legal representation and services to a group of unspecified indigent defendants who appear before a court or group of courts. So most places they have contract systems are like for a year. Small counties often have them. In those longer term contracts, we don't do a distribution analysis because they've contracted with one or more attorneys to handle all of the cases in that jurisdiction. Instead, we look just to see, did they follow the rules? And at a high level, the rules just require open solicitation and application process that is finalized with a contract that's approved by the Commissioner's Court. Harris County, in our prior review, the issue arose that they have many short-term contracts, and there's other counties that use what they call term assignments. They're essentially short-term contracts of 1 day or 1 week. That's the common length. And they made the case, I think, effectively, and TIDC changed our rules that in cases of very short-term contracts, that we don't require contracts be adopted by the Commissioner's Courts. It would be too cumbersome. Would be dozens and dozens of them all the time. So instead, they come under our distribution analysis. So that's how these things are related. And in that analysis, we found that what was happening is there's many short-term assignments, as Mr. Bunnan just referenced. And that really distorts the distribution analysis when you have a handful of attorneys getting a large share of contracts. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a
Of
dumb
course.
question? So when you say a 1-day contract or a 1-week contract, is that like you're on call, you take every case that comes in today, or you take
Like
every
a
case
duty
that comes?
attorney.
Attorney
Okay.
for the day, attorney for the week.
In the case of Harris County, they have a limit of no more than 5 new felony cases per day when they're serving as a term attorney. Either if it's a term of 1 day, you can get no more than 5 cases that day. If you're a term attorney for 1 week, you could get theoretically up to 25 cases that week, no more than 5 per day. But nonetheless, you can see that these numbers can add up.
There's no annual. And it's the only kind of contract where you have that out. And so that's where a lot of the problems are coming, is these attorney of the day.
Exactly. That's what our analysis found, was that really was leading to these out of whack distributions and the very high caseloads. In fact, it probably makes sense to turn to, well, the proposal is to require an annual cap, as Mr. Bunnan just gestured to, if you have that kind of a system. And page 78 and 79 does an analysis of what that might look like in Harris County, hypothetically. Starting on the left side, TIDC conducted a caseload study, and so we have caseload guidelines for these cases. 128 was what was found to be the maximum amount that could be fairly handled by one attorney in a given year, or 226 misdemeanor cases, or the weighted combination. So Mr. Lawrence did the analysis, and it was highly informative that if they set the judges of Harris County under this rule amendment, if it was adopted, hypothetically set a cap at 150% of the weighted caseload guidelines, which would be 192 cases instead of the 128 that we recommend. What we found is that, well, there's 75 attorneys in Harris County that dispose of more than 192 appointed felony cases in the Harris County courts. That totally excludes any other type of work they may have handled in misdemeanor cases, retained cases, appointed and other types of cases. So if the scatter plot chart on the page 79, the next page, that red line shows, well, this is 192 cases, and each of those dots represents one attorney and the number of cases they disposed. So you can see there's that 75 attorneys is that left-hand side, orange wedge shape. That represents those 75 attorneys, and under this hypothetical implementation of the rule at 150% of the weighted caseload guidelines, those would be the cases that would be redistributed to other attorneys on the right side of the scatter plot, where 3/4 of the attorneys are doing under that 150%. So this weighed heavily, I think, on the committee. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, just, you
Sure.
said this is felony cases only, because I know one problem we had was if attorneys are on multiple wheels, they may get too high of cases because they're on the juvenile wheel and the felony
Sure.
wheel and the CPS wheel, and so there's sort of no control on how many they get in. But you're saying this is just only felony?
Only felonies.
Okay.
This is only felony appointments in the Harris County District Court. So
They're the only ones doing the contracts. The misdemeanor courts have a managed assigned counsel system.
there are, to be clear, there are a number of jurisdictions that do use these short-term contracts, attorneys for the day, but they tend not to lead to very high caseloads that we see here. So they're especially common in juvenile cases. For coverage for detention hearings is probably the most common, where you have one attorney who is assigned each day to handle however many detention hearings need to be handled through immediate, those initial detention hearings. So the rule wouldn't just target Harris County, it would have more general application. And then the proposed amendment to the contract rules is on page 77. And it basically says in the county with a contract defender program of 1 week or less, so these term assignments of 1 day or 1 week, in their indigent defense plans, that's the countywide procedures under 2604, would need to set a maximum annual appointed caseload or workload for each attorney at each offense level. So in other words, the district court in this scenario would set a maximum annual caseload for felony cases. So it leaves it completely open if it's not that we're setting what that maximum should be, but they would need to go on record, include it in their plan, and then they would have something to measure themselves against in terms of allocating those appointments.
What if they picked 500?
That's, that's
At one point, our misdemeanor courts did something like that. They picked 600, just so they'd have a number. So,
Yes,
yeah,
they could.
they could.
Okay, could you tell them to report the number and the percentage of the guideline that number represents?
Well, I mean, we can calculate that because it's 128 cases. We know that number.
Put that in their published plan? I don't know. Go ahead, sorry.
it's better than nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is a start.
Yeah.
this has been going on forever. I mean, I was a ADA in Harris County 28 years ago. We had, duty attorneys and, week-long attorneys and same type of thing.
But the Commissioners Court will be really happy.
Yeah.
The amount being spent on this is complete. But so there's a committee motion to propose an amendment to TIDC's contract rules to require the court or courts to specify the maximum annual appointed caseloads for contract defender programs of 1 week or less in indigent defense plans. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Do we want to mention the fact that this is just where we're at in the process?
This would be proposing the rule. And so if you adopted the motion, it would be published in the Texas Register, this proposed amendment. It would lay out for at least 30 days for public comment. And then we would bring any comments received back and you would have an opportunity to amend or adopt the rule at that time.
In August.
Right, it should be in August that would be available. So.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, policy monitoring, that is you. Okay.
I have the remainder of the notebook has lots of statistics and pieces of data. I'm not going to cover every one of them, but I'm going to briefly mention a few things on most of these pages. So first, on page 84, we have a summary of recent policy monitoring activity. Since our last board meeting in April, we've issued four new reports. And for 3 of these reports, they've addressed all of our past findings so we can close the review. And so I want to congratulate Bastrop, Deaf Smith, and Tarrant counties on diligent efforts at improving their programs. Next, beginning on page 85, every board meeting, I update you on Maverick and Zavala County monthly appointment statistics. We've started collecting monthly data from them because we were unable to resolve some issues locally with our policy monitoring reviews. However, we've had some great news in the past couple months. They hired an indigent defense coordinator with authority to appoint counsel in both felony and misdemeanor cases. And we believe this will improve the system by, first of all, having more accurate data. Some months we weren't able to get reports from Maverick County, and we think this will fix that. But more importantly, lots of defendants would request counsel when they went before a magistrate, but those requests would seem to be lost somewhere. I don't know if they ever got to the trial court. And so this will close that gap. And so this is one of the things that needs to happen. The second thing that needed to happen was they needed to have an adequate number of attorneys to appoint. And we're hoping to address that with the public defender office y'all just approved. And so between having the new indigent defense coordinator and the public defender office, we think that for both Maverick and Zavala counties, this will address the issues that we found beginning in 2008, but hopefully resolved in 2025. And just in an example, reports that they have on 87 and 88, you can see some of the reports that they've submitted over the past almost year. Next, on page 89, every year we run a risk assessment to determine which counties we're going to conduct new reviews in. And these risk assessments, or the risk assessment, it gathers data mostly from our indigent defense expense report, but also from OCA monthly data reports and our incoming complaint log. But every county gets a score, and the top scores for large, small, and medium-sized counties in each administrative regions are eligible for a new site visit. Our policy team meets and we discuss which of those counties should get a new site visit. And our proposed schedule for this year is on pages 93 and 94, and we have a map showing where we've been and where we intend to go on page 95. We're now continuing on to statistics. Our indigent defense expense report is not quite complete, but we have, most of the counties have submitted their data, so this is preliminary. But what we have here on page 96 is a chart showing felony and misdemeanor appointment rates. The top line shows felony appointment rates. And this last year it was about 84% of felony defendants received appointed counsel, and in misdemeanor cases, the second line, it was about 58%. So the misdemeanor appointment rate is up from past years, and we've seen regular increases since 2003. And this is very positive news. We still have a number of counties that have very low appointment rates, and some of them actually have a 0% appointment rate. So we're not out of the woods yet, but I think we're moving in a very positive direction.
Joe, if I can comment.
Go ahead.
I guess last week or the week before, the statewide criminal defense lawyers met, as you know, in San Antonio. And I talked with the incoming president, Nicole DeFore, who's out of Houston. And I know some of her attorneys had raised the issue of the no misdemeanor appointments, whatever, 25 years after the passage of the Fair Defense Act. And I said, I'd bring it up to y'all that we can really kind of try to work on that together. I know we send letters and all of that, but 25, we still have counties that are not appointing in misdemeanor cases. And I know the statewide association is concerned with that, and I find it troubling too. So we'll see what we can do.
The presiding judge brought it up at the Judicial Council meeting we had a few weeks ago too, as something that he was concerned about. So yeah, we should.
I'll do whatever I can do.
Yeah, all right.
Well, thank you. Very good comments. Continuing on page 97, one of the pieces of our indigent defense expense report is an auditor report about each attorney. And this report shows how much the attorney was paid and for how many cases and what types of cases the attorney was paid. One thing that we've seen is since our attorney report has been in place, we've seen a gradual or maybe more than gradual reduction in attorneys taking appointments. And in 2024 appears to be no exception. We've seen a 6.5% drop from 2023. And so we're still having troubles attracting attorneys. Attorneys report to us the percent of their practice time devoted to appointed cases in each county as well. Those attorneys that still take appointments, they report that this takes a lot of their time, and the median amount of time that they reported was it takes 70% of their time. So there's fewer attorneys, and it's taking a large percentage of their time taking appointments. Now continuing on to pages 98 and 99, and then after this we'll have some more data. But this shows the top appointed caseloads in Texas. I think Scott, after I go through this, has a proposal, and then we can maybe have more discussion. But what we saw in 2024 is there were 20 attorneys that had at least 4 times our weighted caseload guidelines. Wesley referred to these earlier, and it's we recommend a maximum of 128 felony cases, 226 misdemeanor cases, or 31 appeals, or some combination thereof. But we had 20 attorneys that received between 4 and 8 times the weighted caseload guidelines. And so for a lot of these attorneys, this isn't an aberration. The highlighted attorneys on this list were also on the 2023 list. So on page 99, don't turn there yet. Those are the 2023 totals, so you can just compare that they're rather similar. So 12 of those attorneys were on both lists. And here the main areas where we had very high caseloads were Dallas, Harris, and Tarrant counties. And so with that, let's go ahead to page 100. And here we have the top paid attorneys. Most attorneys do not make a lot of money on appointments. The median amount received by attorneys was a little under $40,000. But this year, 32 attorneys made more than $500,000. And we had 3 attorneys that made more than $1 million. And that, when we
Yeah,
first,
Wife team on here somewhere? Is there a-
well, that was an earlier year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. But here, the main culprit here is Harris County, 21. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just telling Judge.
21 of these attorneys were from Harris County, 6 were practiced in Tarrant and 4 in Fort Bend. And 12 of these were also on last year's list. So with that, Scott, you had a proposal, I believe.
Yeah, so when I saw this, we talked about it, you know, discussed what we might do about it. And so I was gonna throw it out there, see what y'all thought. We were thinking, well, it would be good at least to let the judges know that, hey, this is going on, just like FYI, in case you don't know. You have, you know, these attorneys who have significantly more cases than TIDC would recommend under our guidelines. And letting them know about the guidelines, letting them know about these high caseloads, maybe they would want to address the issue. Yes.
I was gonna say, our commissioners would send us these reports.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I think it's, I think it's a fair, because sometimes you don't know as a judge. So I think it's helpful to have the info, because we'd be like, that's not okay. We can
Except
have
the
some-
Chronicle does an article on this every other year, naming these people. Everybody
Well,
knows who they are.
That's fine. It's not gonna take too much work to
Yeah.
draft a letter.
Well, I think it's a
and,
great
you
idea.
know,
I'm just
include
saying,
reports.
they seem to be beyond shaming at this point.
Right.
Unless there's something behind that, like you set some kind of caps.
Well, that's also something that could be done. The commission has, you do have authority to set caseload guidelines under the statute, or caseload standards, excuse me, that would actually be in the rules. The commission has not wanted to do that in the past. So this would be something short of that, bringing some, transparency and light to the situation, to the people who might be able to change the situation.
Even if one county doesn't care, I think Tarrant would care.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Harris, they're on the front page all the time.
Well, like, I see Grayson County on here. I know Grayson County cares, and, I think it's a good idea.
How do they calculate how much people get paid for these cases?
They all report to us, actual costs of what they have reported, the auditor
So, yeah.
reported to us.
Hourly, is it by case? Like, how are these attorneys accounting for their time and justifying these amounts?
They sign vouchers that have, in Harris County, they sign vouchers that have hourly rates on them, and those judges have to sign off on those vouchers.
So what are the hourly rates that are approved?
It depends. It's a case by case situation. In terms of the state, some counties have flat fees that they pay per case. Some
Harris County is obviously the problem. So like what do they do?
I think it's about 150.
That's what I was thinking, Alex, 150.
The fee schedule is published on our website.
And
At 150 an hour, you're getting up in the millions.
They're getting good at
Some are
filling
flat
these things
fees.
out, especially now with body cams and stuff.
I don't know enough about the situation to say for sure, but at $150 an hour, the notion that one lawyer could justify $700,000, $800,000, $1 million, that's not humanly possible. There's something going on that other than what's being described around this
I
table.
agree completely.
Well, you'll see here, like on page 100, the top paid attorney had 1,000 felony cases paid in the past year.
What'll happen
And if you broke that down by how many days and hours there are, offhand, I could do the calculation, but
There's not enough hours in the day, but once the judge signs that voucher, Commissioner's Court has to pay those. It's just like in the Brewster County thing, they have to be paid.
And on some of those, like with this 1,000 cases, they also have a $1,000 flat fee. So there's 250 days that the courthouse is open annually. So this person basically disposed of 4 felony cases every day. And I just did the math at $150, there's about 2,080 hours. If you don't take out vacation at 150 an hour, it comes out to 312,000.
So let me ask this, I mean, this list without Mr. Dunn at the top, this list would still contain many absurdities. But that's an outlier. Those numbers are an outlier. What do we think if Mr. Dunn was here, he would say to justify, do people have a justification for this that's offered?
A good one. He's probably attorney of the day a lot. He'd go in there, he'd get the offense report from the prosecutor, get an offer from the prosecutor, walk back to the holding cell, say, this is what they offered. Are you willing to do that? And they go, okay. That's how a lot of cases go through. I mean, that's not a competent way to practice law, but that's what happens.
We did,
all
we
the
have a dozen paralegals who were doing a lot of the legwork and
I
that's
doubt
where a lot of this $1 million is going.
There are some of these folks that do have it, like a team of folks that work on cases. There are some of those lawyers.
Do they have any, like, in our jurisdiction, we have, so 350, 500,000, whatever it is that way, but is there also anything that says extraordinary? In other words, like some of our attorneys go, we really worked hard on this, instead of 1,000, I need 6,000. Do you have that, or is it?
They just have unlimited, and then if a judge signs off
Yeah.
on those hours.
It is, once again, it's been years, but back in Harris County, that's exactly what would happen, right? There would be the attorney of the day. He'd walk up to me as the prosecutor and go, what's your offer on, A, B, and C? We would do it, and, they won out, right? And so 7 minutes later, we were doing a plea, but
The case volume
is
is absurd,
Yes.
but I can imagine, like, some of these cases are low commitment. It's the money.
Yeah.
That, I just, yes.
I'm coming back in my next
Some of it
slide.
is, some of it is corruption. So let's say a friend told me, I've observed the results of an investigation where the attorney, a bailiff was using the judge's stamp to stamp pay sheets, and it came to find out it was more hours than there were in the day, and it eventually came to light. And I don't know these people, but like any system, there's corruption, and I agree that judges need to be provided with the information, because a situation that can happen is if you have 13 district judges and they're each signing pay sheets, but they don't know how much the other district judges have approved, then nobody knows that this total dollar amount is going out.
For this reason, we have recommended for many years now that Harris County put a managed assigned counsel program in place for the district courts, and they've refused to do so. So that is another thing the county could do to provide additional oversight over the attorneys and how much they are paid, but they haven't wanted to take that step.
Well, Commissioners Court's all for that. Judges won't vote
Right,
for it.
the judges, because of the way that the system works, the district judges have to sign on to that as what they want to do. It's, even if the Commissioners Court wanted to do it, the district judges ultimately have to change their indigent defense plan and agree to have a managed assigned counsel program in place. They have it in the misdemeanor courts, but they don't have it in the felony courts.
It would probably have a negative impact on the campaign contributions if they did that.
No, honest.
Are we pretty, is 150 an hour, how firm are we on that? Are they?
Bill just looked up what the numbers are. So on
Okay.
capital first chair, 225, capital second, which this is now 200, first degree, 175, second degree, 150, third degree, 125.
Do they pay all hourly in Harris, or do they have flat?
There's
fee?
flat
Okay.
as well. And there's no presumptive max. So I haven't looked. I was in Harris County 2 years before going to Bear, but I wasn't over this part.
I forget, there's a limit on how many you can get paid in a single day, but you can get paid for more than one case, just showing up in one day.
This is volume practice, and it's And it's a challenge, and I think it, puts a big spotlight on it. We have some caseload challenges that I'm gonna talk with staff afterwards. We don't have anybody on that list, but I've got attorneys, and it's really kind of, for us, it's kind of a shortage, but we oversee both the misdemeanor, the felony, and the juvenile. And that was the reason I was interested, because it's the first program in the state where it's all three, and we have a public defender. But yeah, there's been huge resistance, because when I was there was a push to do the manage assign. We were not able to get it through. We even gave an award, I say TIDC gave an award on the juvenile. We have 3 juvenile court judges. I say we, because I've been there, but 3 juvenile court judges in Harris County. Award was given.
A grant.
A grant award was given, and then Harris County gave the grant back to the state. So
I mean, it may be easy to be cynical about one county, but I think, for example, we were always very receptive to the data from our commissioners, because, commissioners hate paying out into defense money, but judges, we hate corruption, and so let's not let the cynicism about one county overwhelm. The question before us is, should we provide this data to all the counties? And I think absolutely.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I can do that. And when you say all the counties, all the folks.
The
on-
affected
The
counties.
affected counties, the folks who we're seeing on these lists, what counties these attorneys are coming from.
Mhm.
Okay, I can do that.
And I'll put together information on those. We have our new data analyst. We finally have our Odyssey case management system. We're able to pull data. It's taken us a little over 3 years, but I'll put together something so you can send even though we're not on the list, we'd be on the list, not at the payment, but the numbers. And I'm gonna be presenting that to Commissioners Court later this year. But I would.
And I'll give you another example. So I mentioned when we were talking about the Tech Shares grant, that is an automated system for putting in your pay sheets, sort of a centralized collection. One of the issues that we had previously was we had paper pay sheets, and people were taking all their pay sheets for all their cases to one particular judge to sign all of them. So we had to say, no, you have to take it to the judge whose case it is. But then we still don't have oversight over who's signing what, right? And so I think centralized systems help with that, and then publishing data helps with that. But right, it's just a matter of finding these little leaks and plugging them.
Do we know whether these numbers have spiked in recent years in Harris County?
When I was there, you would know
Yeah.
that. They keep going up. I don't know if I would call it a spike, but there's been every year it goes up. When I used to run these reports, the top person might be 500,000, and then it jumped to 700,000. Last year was 1 million, and now we have 3 people over 1 million.
I'd be interested in seeing the same report from 10 years ago. Could you run that for me?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is the issue of the pay has gone up, but,
Sure.
I think some of these folks, I feel like the case numbers are higher than they used to be too for a number of these people as well.
And they keep going up
Yes.
every time. From last year, from the year before, they just keep going up.
I mean, it's not even close to the number of cases here. Look at everybody else in the list. There's no one else even at 500. I don't know. I took appointed cases for a bit of my career, and I didn't never figure out how to do that. Probably wouldn't think.
Yes.
We're done.
Complaints?
Other than what we.
Exactly.
We'll just leave the report speaks for itself.
Okay,
We're
I
continuing
think we're
within
good
scope,
then.
so.
Next meeting, Scott?
The next meeting is August 28th, I believe. And that is a Thursday. So whereas we've been usually on Fridays, this one's gonna be on Thursday. Once again, we do like to try to create a year's worth of scheduling so that folks can, get it on their calendars ahead of time. And so that was the date, the consensus date that folks had when we sent out those requests. So 10 a.m. on Thursday, August 28th.
And the Texas Judicial Council has not done their August meeting yet, right? We don't have a date for that.
We will not have an August meeting.
Okay, okay. Okay, any new business? Any public comment?